Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and, honestly, deeply complex ideological family tree. We're looking at the DNA of conservatism. Now, no matter where you happen to sit on the political spectrum, understanding this foundational philosophy is absolutely crucial, mainly because its branches reach into almost every single aspect of global politics today. So we're going to take a totally impartial look at how this ideology actually started, what core principles kind of glue it all together, and how it's fractured and evolved over the years. Here is our roadmap for The Explainer. We'll start with the origins of conservatism, move into the core themes and beliefs, then check out its authoritarian and paternalistic roots, cover the libertarian shift, and finally, we'll wrap up with the new right. Section 1. Origins of conservatism. Let's start right at the very roots of our family tree. So, to kick things off, we really have to ask, what exactly is conservatism? It's a great question, right? Because historically speaking, it's notoriously tough to pin down. Unlike other ideologies that hand you this highly rational, rigid blueprint for building a utopian society, conservatism is arguably the most intellectually modest and pragmatic ideology out there. It's usually defined way more by a cautious attitude and a pretty profound suspicion of abstract principles than by some strict set of dogmatic rules. To really get why it's so pragmatic, you have to realize that conservatism didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually born as a direct reaction against the rapid, super unsettling pace of political and social modernization. Think back to 1789. The French Revolution sparks massive upheaval, and early conservative ideas from thinkers like Edmund Burke suddenly arose to defend the embattled traditional order. By the 1820s, the actual term was being explicitly used to denote opposition to that whole revolutionary spirit. And then, by 1835, conservative officially replaced Tory as a major UK party name. So at its genesis, it's really an ideology rooted in the desire to conserve stability when faced with sweeping, unpredictable change.
Section 2. Core themes and beliefs. Let's isolate the specific DNA that unites this entire family tree.
Despite being so pragmatic, conservatism does rest on 5 core political themes. We have tradition, human imperfection, organic society, hierarchy, and property. Let's break a few of these down to really grasp the worldview here.
First up is tradition. The UK writer G.K. Chesterton phrased this brilliantly. He said, "Tradition means giving votes to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. It is a democracy of the dead." That perfectly captures this almost Darwinian conservative belief about society. The customs and institutions that manage to survive over centuries, whether we're talking about a monarchy or the traditional family, well, they haven't done so by accident. They've been rigorously tested by time. They've proven their fitness to survive, and in doing so, they provide individuals with a really vital sense of identity and rootedness. But this reliance on tradition only makes sense if you understand the conservative view of human nature. Take the philosopher Thomas Hobbes, for example. He's kind of the poster child for human imperfection. In this somewhat pessimistic view, humans just aren't naturally perfectible, highly rational creatures. Actually, scratch that. It's more like we are inherently morally and psychologically limited. We fear isolation. We fear instability. We are naturally drawn to the safe and the familiar, which is exactly why conservatives prioritize a strong social order and security way over radical liberty.
And this leads us perfectly into organicism. Lean into the biological metaphor for a second. For a conservative, society isn't a machine you can just take apart and rebuild like a bicycle. It operates much more like a fragile living body. Just like a human organism needs the brain, the heart, and the liver to organically work together, society relies on delicate organic relationships between families, local communities, and the nation as a whole. If you tamper with it too radically through social engineering, you literally risk killing the organism entirely.
Section 3. Authoritarian and paternalistic roots. Let's move on and see how this DNA builds into distinct historical movements.
So if society is an organic body, it naturally forms a hierarchy, right? The brain has to lead and the hands have to follow. Early conservatives fully embraced this idea of a natural aristocracy, basically believing that inequality is just a biological fact of life. But, and this is a really vital but, that inequality comes with a deep social duty. Paternalism is authority exercised with the intention of conferring benefit. Think of noblesse oblige. It's the duty of the wealthy and privileged to guide, protect, and provide for the less fortunate, kind of like a parent caring for a child.
A perfect historical example of this is the one nation approach championed by 19th century UK Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. Disraeli pragmatically looked around and acknowledged a huge threat. Society was splitting into 2 completely divided nations, the rich and the poor. He recognized that extreme inequality inevitably breeds revolution, and revolution, as we know, would destroy the organic society. So, what was his solution? Enacting paternalistic social reform. But notice, this wasn't about achieving genuine equality. Not at all. It was about using welfare strategically as the price of privilege, basically protecting the traditional hierarchical order from collapsing in on itself.
Section 4. The Libertarian Shift. Now we transition into a massive shift that introduces some serious dramatic tension to the family tree.
Okay, the crucial point to understand here is a profound philosophical contradiction. Just ask yourself, how in the world can an ideology that champions deep-rooted societal tradition, social duty, and organic hierarchy simultaneously embrace the radical, highly disruptive, and individualistic forces of free market economics? Let's pit these differences against each other side by side to really see it. On the left, we have the paternalist conservatism we were just talking about, valuing pragmatism, the organic whole of society, natural hierarchy, and mutual social duty. But over on the right, libertarian conservatism strips all of that away. It values strict economic principle, atomistic individualism, meaning society is just a collection of self-reliant individuals rather than a connected organic body, meritocracy, and egoism. It is a staggering shift, going from we're all bound together by mutual duty to essentially we are strictly self-interested individuals.
The Austrian economist Friedrich von Hayek perfectly embodies this whole libertarian shift. Conservatives like Hayek embraced classical liberal free market economics not just because they generated wealth, but because they actually viewed the market as a kind of natural law. Interestingly enough, conservatives were also drawn to the market because it acted as a harsh instrument of social discipline. The impersonal, invisible forces of the market maintain order, they penalize inefficiency, and they regulate behavior. And that aligns perfectly with that underlying conservative desire for a structured, deeply orderly society.
Section 5. The New Right. Let's dive into our final section, looking at the late 20th century where these historical branches spectacularly collide.
To quickly set the stage for you, the 1970s marked a huge global turning point. Facing severe economic stagnation and what they viewed as a bloated, over-involved welfare state, political figures like Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Ronald Reagan in the US deployed a highly unusual, radically ideological brand of conservatism. Their main goal? Aggressively roll back state intervention and completely dismantle the post-war economic consensus. And this brings us to the final, somewhat mind-bending fusion that created the New Right. It's essentially a marriage of two seemingly completely opposed forces. On one side, you have neoliberalism, which demands radical economic liberty, minimal state intervention, unregulated markets, and widespread privatization. But on the other side, you have neoconservatism, which demands reactionary social authority, the upholding of very traditional values, strict public order, and a remarkably strong state to enforce police and military discipline. It's a fascinating paradox when you think about it. Roll back the state entirely when it comes to the economy, but drastically strengthen the state when it comes to social morality and law and order.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to chew on. How do these historical roots, these biological metaphors of an organic society, and these really deep philosophical contradictions continue to shape the political world you observe today? Next time you watch a modern political debate, look closely at the arguments. Are you seeing the paternalistic duty of one-nation conservatism? Are you seeing the radical individualism of the free market? Or maybe the authoritarian demand for social order? The DNA we unpack today is all around us, just waiting for you to identify it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll see you next time.